Çevre Güven is the managing editor of Nokta, a small Turkish political magazine. This is the morning of his trial. He faces 24 years in jail for inciting armed rebellion and insulting the president. He's already served 2 months of pre-trial detention in solitary confinement.
Hey, how are you doing? You okay? How are you feeling?
Yine davayı uzatırlar diye düşünüyorum. Hafif bir tedirginlik var ama iyiyim.
Okay, well bye, we'll see you afterwards. Do you think you can really simply explain the charges facing Çevre?
Kapak'tan halkı silahlı isyan teşvikten ve Cumhurbaşkanı hakaretten şey yapıldı. Savcı
Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Hükümeti'ni
devirmek, silahlı isyan teşvik devirmek.
Şimdi 7 Haziran bu bir seçimden sonraki bir günle ilgili bir takvim yaprağı. O seçimden sonra yani 7 Haziran seçimlerinden sonra çözüm süreci yok oldu. Milliyetçilik rüzgarları esti. Bu seçimden sonra Türkiye böyle bir atmosfere girince bir iç savaşa doğru sürüklenir üzerine bir analiz yaptı.
Çevre was wrong. There wasn't a civil war, but there was an attempted military coup. On the evening of July 15th, tanks rolled into Istanbul's Taksim Square and Ataturk Airport was seized. The Parliament building and presidential palace in Ankara were bombed. A faction of the military was trying to oust the president. But the coup failed. President Erdogan has held firmly onto power and is threatening swift and merciless retribution.
Hareketidir ve bu vatana ihanet hareketinin bedelini de tabii çok ağır ödeyecekler. Bunu bir defa peşinen söyleyeyim.
He said the coup was a gift from God to cleanse the army and arrested more than 7,500 people. But Erdogan was purging his critics well before the coup. More than 2,000 people had been arrested for the crime of insulting the president.
Now these are human rights activists, they're lawyers, they're journalists. There's also been at least 2 teenagers arrested for their Facebook posts.
Newspapers and television networks have also sustained a wave of closures and takeovers. Zaman, Turkey's largest circulation newspaper, was taken under state control in March. Its management were accused of supporting a coup plot.
So increasingly, it feels though criticism of the government, and particularly of Erdogan, is being treated as a threat to national security. And for many journalists in Turkey, it feels like free speech is being rebranded as terrorism.
Nokta is now one of the only political magazines in Turkey. Its website has been shut down 5 times, and it's had to change its publisher 10 times. Its print run has dropped to just a couple of thousand a week, as fewer and fewer kiosks are willing to stock it. But for now, the magazine is still running.
The 2 covers that you're currently facing charges for have Erdogan on the cover. Do you now think very hard, think twice about using him on any future covers?
Yani çok iyi bir haber yakalarsak dayanamayıp yine koyarız diye düşünüyorum. Ama yani birazcık denge yaptığımızda söyleyebilirim.
Perihan Magden is Nokta's most high-profile columnist. She's an outspoken advocate for Kurdish rights and one of several journalists who's been charged with threatening Turkey's unity.
How many people do you think will continue to report opposition news despite the risks? Do you think people will stop reporting?
They stopped reporting also because there is no place for them to write now. Many columnists I know. So they are jobless, but they are doing whatever they can. We are not going to shut up. This is our country, I'm not planning to emigrate to America. And we deserve Western standard of democracy, not this Mickey Mouse smudge that Erdogan is trying to push to our faces.
But not all Turkish journalists are critical of the president. A large number believe his crackdown on dissent is justified by major security threats. The Kurdish militants fighting in the southeast, but also Fethullah Gulen, a spiritual leader in exile who to Erdogan and his supporters is a terrorist attempting to overthrow the government using a shadowy network of influential supporters. Erdogan has named Gulen as the coup mastermind and demanded his extradition from the US.
Onlardan bir tanesi hürriyettir. Kendimi böyle burada hissettiğimden dolayı.
Journalists who support the government believe the president's media critics are working to promote Gulen's interests.
There is an elite in Turkey who wants to get rid of Erdogan, and
We're talking about the Gulen movement.
yeah.
When you see a journalist like Cevhere Güven, who's the managing editor of Nokta, being tried as a terrorist for a magazine cover, I mean, do you think that's an intrusion on freedom of speech?
So I think we have to define who are terrorists or who are not. And
So
if
someone like Cevhere Güven, who has put a magazine cover together, could be a terrorist.
yes, of course. Look, I'm not saying that they were definitely terrorists, but what they did or what they allegedly did was a terrorism act. They threatened the national security, they threatened the democratically elected government.
Cevhere has been trying to keep his family life as normal as he can with the threat of a long prison sentence hanging over him.
So what do your children understand about you being in prison? Do they understand that you went to prison?
Şöyle, yani Nihal'e söylemedik. Zaten Ali küçük olduğu için o anlayacak çağda değil.
Have you thought about what you would have to say if you were actually sent back to prison for a longer period of time?
Aynı durumun tekrarlanacağını yani pek düşünmek istemiyorum açıkçası. Yani bilmiyorum, o zaman bir şey düşünürüz ama şu an böyle güzel. Bunun tadını çıkarmak güzel. Pek düşünmedim onu. Yani.
For your wife, do you think she would rather you take the risk or not?
Ya tam olarak bu riski almamı istemiyor çünkü ama ya benim için toplumun çok umursamamasının bir önemi yok. Ben sadece doğru bildiğim şeyi yapıyorum. Başka da bir işte yapamam zaten.
As the shock of the military uprising subsides, fear is growing that Erdogan will use the coup to exert even greater authoritarian control. Writers and journalists are expected to be targeted in the next sweep of post-coup detentions. A pro-government Twitter account has published an unconfirmed list of media targets. Top of that list is Can Dündar, editor-in-chief of Cumhuriyet newspaper and Erdogan's most high-profile media critic. He was recently shot at outside a courthouse by a gunman who called him a traitor.
So when I came in this morning, I was pretty surprised to see the same sort of security that they have in an airport, checking of the passport, X-ray machines.
That's right.
I spoke to some journalists who are more sympathetic to the government position.
Oh, yeah.
And they told me that you are actually pro-Assad.
They are trying to find something to accuse me for being a spy or trying to topple up the government or being a part of a member of a secret organization, terrorist organization, etc. They tried everything, every kind of accusation.
A lot of the opposition to Erdogan is described as being a threat because it's working in the interests of the Gulen movement.
That's right, yeah.
Is the Gulen movement a threat to Turkey in general?
Now the Gulen movement has been smashed, I guess, by Erdogan. That's why they are not so dangerous as before. But Erdogan is much more a threat for all of us, really, because he has the power and he was poisoned by his power. He's becoming a dictator.
Are you frustrated by the lack of criticism from European leaders?
Of course, we are disappointed a lot. What's funny was I was in prison when Miss Merkel visiting Turkey, and Turkish Prime Minister was saying that there's no journalists in Turkish prisons, and I was a journalist watching TV in a prison, in a cell, in solitary confinement, and trying to shout, "Look, I'm here!" And Miss Merkel didn't say anything at all. Turkey has never been a paradise for journalists, but not a hell like this.
Turkey's courts are the theatre in which Erdogan's crackdown on dissent has been played out. Now, after the failed attempt to oust him, thousands more journalists, lawyers, and increasingly ordinary Turks will be silenced here. Chevre walked free from his last trial appearance in May.
What happened?
But his name has appeared alongside Can's on the list of journalists expected to be rounded up in the coming weeks.
Bütün gazeteciler buradan böyle çıkıyor işte. Canlar şurada saldırıya uğradılar. Böyle işte gazetecilerin kaderi Türkiye'de. Ne yapalım?